name is Natasha Chang, and I'm here with the director of Can Pearl Park and Can himself. Pearl Park, thank you so much for being here. It is a great honor talking to you. So can you just tell me a little bit about how you got involved with the project?
That's a long story, but one of the things I noticed was that within Asian American communities, there's a real lack of conversation around mental health issues, and there's a great deal of stigma. And I realized when I did some research that there were no documentary films on this issue, exclusively about mental health. And there are, hundreds of documentaries about, Caucasian Americans and mental health issues and African Americans, but very few about Asian Americans in particular. And the research showed that clearly, like for the last 30 years, that first of all, that Asian Americans receive very delayed treatment after the initial onset of the mental illness, which is tragic because it has tragic consequences for that person. And it seemed, Asian American women between the ages of 15 and 24 have the highest suicide rate in the country. And there's a lot of suicides among Asian American students in particular, and there's a pressure to succeed, an extraordinary pressure from their parents, from society, from within themselves to be academically successful. And some of the students who don't feel like they're making the cut will often get depressed and have, anxiety issues, etc. So I felt that it was a really important topic to bring to light.
Right. And the reason, I guess, why Asian Americans don't want to come forth, maybe if they do realize they have a mental illness, is maybe because they're scared of being defined by it.
Correct.
Do you see that as a problem? I mean,
Absolutely.
People who have come forward and said, I think I have depression, are they at a certain disadvantage in the day and age that we are in right now?
To some degree, unfortunately, I think I've written several, I wrote some articles and blog entries about depression. And unfortunately, because of culture, colors all of our actions, behaviors, and thoughts. And even among those who are very well educated. Asian Americans are among the most educated subpopulations in the United States, but yet, they have cultural stigma. I mean, there's classism, there's racism, and there's ableism. That might be a new word for a lot of people, but it just means that, the perception that a person with disability isn't as good as someone without. Right. We clearly know that's not true. One of the greatest physicists in the world, Stephen Hawking, is in a wheelchair.
Right, exactly.
So people with disabilities are differently abled, and there's a lot of stigma, a cultural stigma around it, unfortunately, which prevents a lot of Asian American women from getting appropriate help. And when I say help, I'm saying that more generically, whether, I'm not necessarily talking about going to a psychiatrist, although that can be a part of receiving help. It could also be having a really strong network of support systems from your friends, from your church, from your temple, from your family, from your academic environment. But also just understanding becoming more aware of your mental health in the same way that we are aware of our physical health and we know when we have to exercise or eat right. Sometimes we have to modulate our external stressors in order to create optimum mental health for ourselves. But we don't have a culture that is conducive to cultivating and creating good mental health at times. Not all the time, but certainly a lot of Asian American students are living within pressure cookers, and that's not healthy, that's not good.
And have you seen any progress from maybe 7 years ago till now?
Oh, absolutely. The White House Initiative and Asian American Pacific Islanders have had a behavioral health forum to which Can and I have been invited every year, annually on May 9th, which is Asian American Mental Health Day. So it's become, the focus of national attention. And I'd like to think that we played a small role in that by making this film and screening it at so many different venues.
Right. And do you think, on your journey at least, to maybe being more familiar with this topic, what were some of the things that most surprised you? Any facts, any, I guess, people's stories, anyone that really just stuck out to you?
Well, I think the most shocking thing to me was when I was shooting, people with mental illnesses at a conference, Alternatives, and other venues. Kwan taught a workshop about wellness and recovery. And like 3/4 of the people I interviewed had been sexually molested by a family member or, a trusted adult. And that was shocking to me because it seems like there's a pandemic of children being sexually molested and assaulted. And that was like really, so many. I mean, it was just unbelievable. That was the biggest shocker. And the fact that people with mental illness often have shorter lifespans by 25 years.
And in an ideal world, it wouldn't take a film star to get kind of attention about mental illness. In the past, let's say year, the amount of celebrities that have taken their own life or have passed away from, mental illness have sort of increased. And do you think that has helped sort of kind of initiated the talk more about this issue? Or has it sort of just made people kind of scared and taken a step back from it and said, I don't really want to get involved in this. I think that's something for someone else to try and do.
I think it's definitely affected popular culture, but typically for first generation and the 1.5 generation Asian Americans, they tend not to be as involved in popular culture as much. Certainly the first generation doesn't watch television or mainstream television in the same way that, second generation Asian Americans might. And it's certainly good that the conversation is being had, but for our community, I think it really helps if it's in our own cultural context. And there haven't been many Asian American celebrities who've come out, other than Kwan. I don't know if you know who that is. He was the survivor. He was on the CBS reality TV show Survivor Cook Islands. Oh, and he won the $1 million prize. He's a really good-looking Korean American guy who went to Yale and Stanford. He came out at a conference saying he had social anxiety and obsessive tendencies. He didn't say he had a mental illness, but he certainly had issues at a very young age. And I was shocked because he's like a stunningly articulate, accomplished and, gorgeous man with, highly respected, and he came out and said that. So I think we have a lot of work to do. I mean, if we can use celebrity figures to get to that conversation and, make it safe for people to say, I am dealing with such and such, and that person can feel supported in the same way if he said, I have heart disease or I have cancer. That always seems to elicit a warm and supportive response. But if you say I have, paranoid schizophrenia, people are not as warm and receptive and supportive. But we hope to create that kind of environment.
Right. And within the Asian American community, as you've seen, like you said, like the sort of like older generation don't really, they don't really watch TV, and they're sort of like stuck in their own bubble. Do you see the younger generation being more comfortable with this idea? Do you see a movement? Do you see progress?
Oh, definitely. Just doing this film, every time it sparks the conversation. Right. I think I was talking to one of the actors from The Revenge of the Green Dragons, and he said, I have such and such diagnosis. And I was like, wow, that's amazing, that you can come out and say that, Then that second generation is much more open and they're more assimilated. So yes, I'm seeing a huge difference in the second generation versus my generation and the first generation. So hopefully it will evolve and, those suicide rates will go down,
That's what everyone's hoping for. Well, thank you, Pearl, for this interview. It was great talking to you. If you'd like to see more interviews, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter.